Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for listening wherever and whenever you are doing so. John Buzby along with Marty Sheehan. Week 9 of the Delaware high school football season is in the books. 1 week left. Handful of teams' seasons are over because they played in week 0 and didn't have an off week. Other teams are playing in week 10. Not a whole lot still on the line. Playoffs or not, but everybody's still jockeying for position in the playoffs.
Yes.
And so going to be an interesting week 10 in some cases. What we thought was going to be the biggest game of the week, St. George's and William Penn, may not be the case anymore because William Penn lost a game we thought they'd win, and St. George's won a game that we thought they'd lose.
That's right.
So at least we did. So, but we'll see. But there were some exciting tight games. There was a game that had playoffs or not on the line, the Red Lion Woodbridge game, of course. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's start with Sally's and Dover, Marty. Sally's gets the 18-16 win. Dover trailed 16-0. James Collins with field goals of 25, 31, and 41 yards. And you know what, Marty? He's got to be Sally's MVP, and more on that later. But
I agree.
Just an incredible performance by James Collins. But Dover came back and tied the game at 16. And then with 7:34 to go in the game, punter Aiden Montgomery pinned Dover on their own 1-yard line, and the Senators fumble the ball, and it becomes a safety. And so there's not a whole lot of games I've been involved in where a team has lost on a safety that late in the game. And so just really a quirky game. Dover's season is over. That was their last game. Sally's has to host Apo, and that's going to be a jockeying for position type of game. But anyway, it was interesting to see, those two teams play each other. They've been in what we've called that second level of the Class 3. Smyrna and Smyrna I've raised probably even a little bit more after watching them play live against Apo High on Friday night. But that second tier, it really is going to be a crapshoot. And, you look at the teams that played, what was it? Sussex Central beat Sally's by 7, or was that vice versa? I can't remember. Vice versa. So, the games between these second tier teams have been relatively close, and this is one of them. And so, I'm not sure who I would take in a 3-game series if it was best of 3, but it's going to be one and done in the playoffs. And that's what's going to make it exciting when the fields are announced next weekend.
It is. And this was a fun game to watch. It looked like for a while, as you said, it was going to be a Salesianum blowout when they got up 16-0. And then it's funny that Kilby runs in a 1-yard touchdown to make it 16-8. And then, we give all the credit to Collins. We have to give credit to the line of Dover that blocked his 49-yard attempt, which turned into they returned for the touchdown to tie it at 16. So it almost was like they were sick of seeing him on the field and somebody was going to get to him, and they did. But it's also funny that, I've pointed out on Twitter throughout the season, I don't recall a year where I've seen so many bad snaps on exchanges, and it bit Dover right at the worst possible time. And that, that's the ball game. And I'm sure for Chip Knapp and those guys, that's just a killer to digest. Not going to hurt them too much, of course, in the grand scheme of things. They're still going to have to go out and win their games no matter where they're seated. This game next week for Sally's and Apo now sets up as for Sally's, it's the championship game of District 1. If Sally's wins, they're and who would have thought that when the season started? Which will, people may say, oh, big deal. Well, that will guarantee them one of the top 2 seeds, which most likely, unless Smyrna gets upset this week, it's going to be Sally's as the number 2 seed. The only reason I bring that up is because it's going to be interesting. Remember, Middletown now is out there in the 3, 4, 5 range. This may set up some interesting semifinal matchups. I just think I'm so glad they eliminated the 11-team open tournament, went to the 8, because I think we're still going to get some blowouts in the first round, but I think there's a potential there for some of the lower teams, some of the lower seeded teams to hang with them. Like last year, that first week, we could just kind of blow it off because we knew they were just going to be savagely beaten, the Cape and Logan.
Running clocks.
Exactly. So in theory, this could be a really good Division 3 tournament or Class 3 tournament, and I think it will be. But hats off to Sally's. They got 116 yards from Ransom. 16-24 for 107 yards was Ryan Storr. Continues to have a solid season, and much like McConomy for Appoquinimink, Kilby is the guy, has been for a long time for Dover now. 121 yards on 13 carries, and again, they know he's getting the ball. Surprised Dover for some reason, John Parker and Cosme haven't connected a lot lately, and I really thought that was going to be a big combination throughout the season. And I'm not sure why that hasn't clicked, but if they're going to compete in the playoffs, that's going to be a big part of it.
I wonder with Parker, making so many headlines and obviously being in so much film in the first half, whether defenses have clamped down on him.
And that could be. He's only
that's changed the
sophomore,
thing.
so
Right.
yeah, yep.
Yeah. So I don't, like you say, you never know. Other than we know that the teams they're playing are good defensively, and
Yes.
so nobody's surprised when Parker catches the ball, and
That's
so
right.
teams are
That's
trying to
right.
do that. So anyway, that was one of the two games that were interesting. The other one was going to be Middletown and Sussex Central, and it was interesting for a bit when Middletown led just 14-10 in the second quarter. And then I'm not sure what happened, but the light switch went on, or maybe went off on the other end, and Middletown comes away with a 42-16 win. And what surprised me the most about this, Marty, wasn't Sussex Central's inability to score against the Middletown defense. I would have maybe assumed that, but I wouldn't have assumed Middletown would rack up 42 points against Sussex Central. And that's kind of what surprised me about this game, is that it was so lopsided, especially as close as it was beginning. You look like, hey, this is going to be a barn burner. Maybe one of those, whoever scores the go-ahead touchdown in the third quarter is going to end up winning this thing. And that wasn't the case.
No, and that's why I put this as one of our feature games, is because that's the surprising aspect of it. I agree with you. I thought Sussex Central would struggle to score, but I thought this would be, if you told me this was an 18-16 game, I would have believed you, because I thought that's where it would fall. Middletown started to get the passing game going with Austin Troyer, and Sussex Central, man, they got behind every Sussex Central DB, it seemed like, for the rest of the night after they decided to just air it out. Troyer was 14 of 24 for 293 yards. 14 completions for 293 is pretty good.
Pretty good.
They had Tyron Hansen caught 4 for 68. Middletown had 436 yards of total offense, and it was pretty balanced. And part of that was the big second half for Middletown, where they were able to stretch the defense so far that it opened up the running lanes for guys, and they were just kind of able to move the ball at will. Sussex Central was on their heels the entire second half, but I think this was a big wake-up call for Sussex Central. I think if you'd asked anyone there, they would have said going in that they're going to win this game. Middletown offense has not been outstanding for a lot of the season. They've had to struggle to score points. They did not, and they did it against a very good defense. So Sussex Central's got to go back to the drawing board, and if you're Middletown, Coach Blum's got to feel very good about what he saw from the team on Saturday.
And of course, they were coming off
Friday,
that 58 nothing thrashing down at IMG Academy, and so that's kind of like scrimmaging against a JV team scrimmaging against their varsity all week, and then all of a sudden, okay, we get to play a real JV team, and all of a sudden things get a lot easier. And I texted you when I was at a Middletown game earlier this season, that Austin Troyer kid's got a rocket for an arm.
He does.
And so if they're able to figure out how to get the wide receivers open where he can hit them for yardage after the catch, then they're going to be a tough out. But some people criticize Middletown playing so many out of state. They left the state of Delaware 3 times, once on a long motor coach ride, once on a 2-hour motor coach ride, and once on an airplane. And this is when, Coach Blum would tell you, this is where it's going to pay off, is in the playoffs. And so, you wouldn't have wanted to face Middletown no matter what.
No.
But I think a couple of weeks ago, you might have felt a little bit better. But then when you see what they did to what many consider to be a top 3 team in Class 3 in Sussex Central, you really have to question that. Middletown's going to host Hodson to close out their season. That will officially be Frank Moffitt's last game. They lost a tough one in Newark. We'll talk about that in a second. Sussex Central is going to host Cesar Rodney High School, which picked up their first win in a couple of years. So the Riders are going to be flying high going into that game, but they're going to have to beware, because Sussex Central is going to be looking to remake another statement. And again, still jockeying for position.
And real quick, just to finish up, put a button on that Middletown out-of-state thing for our listeners who may not know and thought, well, Middletown got destroyed 58-0. We found out it could have been a heck of a lot worse, John, as West Toronto Prep went down to IMG. West Toronto Prep had not scored a point all season, I don't believe, when I looked at their max preps. They went down and lost 96-0 in a game that was called at halftime. And if you watch the highlights, it is incredible how bad this team was. And if I'm the president of IMG, I want the athletic director on the horn. I want to find out how this game ever got scheduled. It was horrific.
What about if you're the president or the principal of the other school?
I agree.
Where did they fly from?
Toronto. Yeah,
Yeah,
literally.
so
I mean, out of the country they went to find this game. They
you know
couldn't
what?
find a 6A team in Texas or Louisiana to beat up on.
Or just fly down to Disney World. If
Yeah,
you're trying to give your people the experience of
That's
leaving
right.
the country, just fly to Disney World and have fun for a few
That's
days.
right.
It would have been just as cheap and or expensive and that's crazy. I mean, that is where you really have to think. I mean, because it's not like they didn't see film on IMG. You know,
Right.
they're not some small
Right.
town school that you can't get film on and wonder whether you would match up well with this team or not. So,
I got to tell you, there's one.
nuts.
If people out there find the highlights on Twitter, and I think I retweeted them at some point, but if you go to where the game was 9-0, there's a snap that goes over the quarterback's head, and he goes back to get it, and he turns and looks, and there's 3 IMG linemen coming right at him. He basically says, "Nah, I'm good." He turns and walks the other way and just lets them recover it for a touchdown.
Jesus.
It's just at that point, you're just like, oh my gosh, what have they gotten themselves into here?
Well, I hope they went to Disney World.
Me
at
too.
Some point.
Yeah, I went to I went to IMG, lost 96-0. All I got was this lousy T-shirt, right?
And we ate at IHOP.
That's right.
I don't know if they have them in Canada or not. All right. Before we do our quick hits section, this day and age, we all think our phones take great pictures, and they take a lot better pictures than they used to. But trust me, until you have a professional photographer with a professional camera and lens take a picture, you have no idea what you're missing. Andre Smith of Andre L Photography. That's Andre EL Photography. And that's his website address. He takes unbelievable sports photos. He's a professional journalist, photographic journalist. And he just does an incredible job, no matter what the sport is, no matter what the situation is, whether you're looking for somebody to take team photos, if you're in charge of it for your organization or your league, or you've got a senior playing for the last time. Remember, they don't play after this year in a lot of cases. So spend the time and spend the money and have a professional take photo shots of your senior. But it doesn't matter the sport, doesn't matter the situation, senior, whatever they are. Andre L Photography is the man that you want behind the lens when you're taking pictures. Photos last a lifetime. And Andre L Photography, that's EL photography.com. Check his photos out on the site. I promise you won't regret if you look into having him take photos of your kid. And he's a fun guy. That's the best part about Andre. You'll enjoy his company during the entire process. So give him an opportunity to make memories for your family. That's AndreLphotography.com. All right, let's move on to the quick hits now. We're going to start with what many considered to be the biggest game of the year. Marty and I both agreed it would have been the game we would have been at. Red Lion and Woodbridge, winner in the playoffs, loser out of the playoffs. Started out a little bit slow. Red Lion led by just 8 at the half, and then they turned it on in the second half, 61-16 to clinch the last playoff spot. Just an unbelievable second half performance. And Andre, when you see Marty, not Andre, he's not on this podcast. When you see the second half performance like that, you got to put your hats off to the coaching staff, because obviously they made some huge adjustments when you go from just leading by 8 at the half to rattling off 61 points, or I guess 53 points in the second half. So hats off to Coach Ken Anderson. Congratulations for making the playoffs. They've struggled there at Red Lion the last couple of years. But what a performance by Red Lion.
This was incredible. I thought this was going to be a nip and tuck game down to the end. It was nothing at the end of the first quarter. Like I said, a very slow start. Neither team could get anything going. And then in the second half, boy, the Red Lion offense just exploded. And it's so weird to see a Marvin Dooley defense give up points like this. And, every time I was refreshing the person that was following this game on Twitter, because there was no media at this game. It was like a blackout at this game.
Yeah, which is odd, being as big as it was.
Exactly. There was a fan there that was retweeting everything. So, and every time I refreshed, I swear it went from 24-8, 31-8, and it just kept on going and going until we reached 61-16. Evan Budinger, who's their freshman quarterback, has had a phenomenal season through 2 touchdown passes. Malik Pinkett, who I believe is a sophomore, rushed for 145 yards, 57, 5, and 65 touchdown runs. So this is a team. It's a young team. They're capable of making some noise. Now, when they come up against a really, really good defense, who knows what's going to happen in the playoffs? But they certainly have the offense. The threat is there to put a scare into one of the top teams, if not beat one of the top teams at some point. So, yeah, congratulations to Ken Anderson and his bunch. They won a bunch of games that they did not win last year, and then totally reversed those losses, changed them into wins. So, a great job by the Red Lion Lions.
And Red Lion will take on Del Castle at home on Friday night to close out their season, and then they're jockeying for position like everybody else in the playoffs. So it's a big game for them. Del Castle has yet to win a game, so it's their last chance to win a game. So they're going to come into it with that attitude of hey, we got one left to go, especially for the seniors. For Woodbridge, Marty, without looking up, now I was going to say maybe Marvin Dooley's worst season in terms of wins, but remember, he coached at Christiana for a couple of years.
He did.
And I didn't take the time, just thinking of that now, to look up and see what his records were there. So it may not have been his worst season record-wise. But for those who don't know, he lost two significant players at the beginning of the season for two different reasons.
Yep.
And so, when you at a school the size of Woodbridge, when you lose two of your best players, and that's what somebody told me they were, you lose them probably on both sides of the ball and maybe on special teams as well. And so while I'm sure Marvin's not one to make excuses, there are, that could be a reason why they weren't as good as maybe they thought they would be. I don't think anybody thought they were going to win a state championship this year necessarily. No. Remember, they made it to this title game last year. But I still, as you said, you don't expect a Woodbridge team in the past decade to not at least win half your games, which they didn't do.
Right. Yeah. They're sitting on 2 wins right now. And it's just been a brutal season. Again, it's a sort of a weird testament to the playoff situation that they were able to have 2 wins and still go in with a chance to clinch a spot. But because of that district play, everybody's in it for most of the year. So at least makes things more interesting. But yeah, I can't imagine we'll see a repeat of this performance from Woodbridge next year.
And they play Howard in their last game in week 10. So that's going to be
they're looking at a 2-8
tough one
season.
to pick up 1-3. Yeah, so. All right, Lake Forest 49-7 over Delmar. I didn't see this one coming. Not that I didn't expect Lake to win. I wouldn't have been shocked either way. But just an unbelievable performance by Freddie Johnson. They've put up 49 plus points in 4 games this year, and just an unbelievable performance by Lake Forest. It's their first win over Delmar since 2015.
Yes.
So not just a big win, but just a historic win, for lack of a better term. That's 6-7 seasons since you beat Delmar. And so, just Freddie Johnson he's got his team playing the best it's played all season at the right time of the year.
Absolutely. They lost a close one to Caravel, but they have been really, really good, especially on offense. Jonathan Tyndall, the quarterback, leading that offense, doing a great job. This was my first experience with the Delmarva Sports Network. That's where this game was shown. And I thought our buddy Corey Nido was does a really nice job on play-by-play. Tim Nolan was the color commentator. It was a great broadcast to listen to, very well presented. But it's funny because I actually direct messaged Corey that night, and he said, man, I thought this was going to be a close game, which is why I left it on the schedule, because there were other places they could have gone. But it got out of hand so quickly. And, it was 27-0, and there was about 50 seconds left before halftime, and Delmar got a touchdown. He thought, okay, 27-7, it's down by 20 points, but it's still 3 scores. 2 plays later, Lake Forest gets one of and I'm not sure if the highlight's out there or not, but this incredible touchdown pass where it bounced off of one Delmar, a Lake Forest player, right into the hands of another who was wide open, streaking down the field. And all of a sudden it's 34-7 at halftime. It took them about 16 seconds to score. And that was the nail in the coffin. Delmar just had nothing left after that. And, the interesting thing for Delmar is, based on some other things that happened, they're in the playoffs as well. So this was, a lot of people thought that they had to win this game. They did not. There were some other outside things that had taken place that locked their spot. But yeah, if you're Delmar and they're a good defensive team, and
Mhm.
they've started to pick it up offensively. Man, this was just a complete rout. They were never in this game, and for Lake Forest and Freddie Johnson, this is an incredible win to build on as they steam toward the playoffs.
And both teams are going to be in the playoffs. Lake's going to head above the canal again, where they've been very successful this year, and they're going to play at McCain. McCain out of the playoffs, and so they're going to be looking at this as, hey, seniors, it's our last chance to win a game and win at home. So it's going to be a tough one. Delmar is going to play down a class and play Laurel, but that's not the team you want to face if you're playing down a class.
No.
But maybe it is, because, the last thing the coach wants to do is have a pansy game heading into the playoffs, especially when you're coming off a 49-7 loss. So you can't fix things when you're blowing teams out. So probably actually a good choice to end the season if you're going to play down a class and play a rivalry game down there, which is what that is. Those schools are located, I think, within about 10 miles of each other, if even that. So big game for both teams, as both are jockeying for position. And that's the thing. It's when the committee meets next Sunday morning, which, by the way, our podcast will drop later next Sunday, because we're going to wait until the tournament field's announced, and that can happen anytime between 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's just the way it is. And so until this all shakes out, and as Marty, you and I were talking about before we even got on the air today, there's still bonus points to be decided, which teams are going to be which bonus points. And so it's not just to look at the schedule or the standings and say, okay, this is the second team, they're going to get the number 2 seed or whatever. It doesn't work that way. So will be interesting to see. All right, next game, Conrad with a 26-20 win over Del Castle. Conrad's record now 3-6. Del Castle, as I mentioned, yet to win a game. It was the first night game ever at Conrad, Marty, and teams, a couple schools have done that this year. Christiana did it. Conrad did it. There was another school somewhere, I forget who it was, that did it, where they basically bring lights in. They're not always the best lights, and it's not because they don't shine a light. It's because if you punt the ball more than 40 yards in the air, you're not seeing it once it goes up there. But for these schools that are doing it, it's a great experience. With all the issues they've had at night games here, it's going to be interesting to see whether we've seen the last school in Delaware have lights installed permanently, just because the way things are. I'm not sure if you would spend the money at least to watch here for the next couple of years how things go with some of the issues we've had, which we won't talk about. We spent enough time talking about that. But anyway, so a neat experience for the Conrad football team. Nice that they picked up a win. If you're going to bother renting the nights, or a lot of time the lights are donated. And I put a message into somebody to find what the answer was to that, and I didn't get a reply back, which is fine. But it was just a neat experience. There really is nothing like playing under the lights. And I'm sure you did at some point. I'm trying to think. I don't think I ever played a high school game under the lights, because nobody had lights in South Jersey. Back when I was playing, soccer would have been the game I played under the lights, and nobody had lights in the stadiums over there. But I played as a youth. It's funny, the high school stadium doesn't have lights, but you go down the street to the park where all the rec teams are playing, and there's lights.
There's lights, nice ones.
But anyway, it really is a thrill. So good for Conrad. Nice that they picked up the win for that. So, but again, a game between two teams that were new going in. They were already out of the playoffs.
And this was Coach Chet Walters made a big deal about this on Twitter, and it was, for the seniors, this was such a cool experience. 4-year guys who put in so much hard work, and to get to end their career senior night, their senior night, I should say, in a setting like this was really cool. Leniak Preston, who I talked about last week, has had about 700 yards, I think, close to in the last 3 games. He opened the game with a 60-yard kick return for a touchdown. He threw a 10-yard, or caught a 10-yard TD pass, excuse me. Also ran one in. Their quarterback, Gabe Welsh, has had a nice season. He was 6 of 10 for 106 yards. Nair Coleman, 11 carries for 59 yards. And they had Jay Wells Huff, a 40-yard interception return. And this was, it was a fun game. The stadium was packed. According to the pictures I saw, the lighting looked really good up at Conrad, which is nice. So just a great experience for those kids.
All right. So the next game, quick hits, the last one we're going to talk about is St. George's and Cape Henlopen, 28-19. St. George's with the win to up their record to 3-6. Marty, Cape is 0-3 in their last 3 games, with basically what we think is they needed to win one of those 3 to probably get into the playoffs, especially now the way we've seen other things unravel. One win probably would have gotten them in. They're not officially eliminated yet, but this was the most winnable game of the 3 of the last 3 that they've had, which were against Sussex Central and Appoquinimink. Played Appo very close last week, didn't get the win. But I was just shocked that they weren't able to pull off a win against St. George's. Now, what that tells you, and we talked about this last week, St. George's record, which is now 3-6, it was 2-6 heading into that game, is kind of deceiving because you look at, again, credit John Wilson. He and Bill Denard are the only two teams doing what everybody should do, in my opinion, which, of course, is the most important opinion, is play everybody else in your class so that it's a true outlook of what the final standings are. But anyway, that's here nor there. I'm not going to win that argument probably, other than maybe with you.
Yeah.
And because I know you agree with me. But, so you look at St. George's record, they're playing tough teams, and they've played some of those teams close. Yep. And so, they're probably maybe the best 3-win team in the state. And so not completely shocked, more shocked that Cape wasn't able to win, almost. Again, you have to go into that like it's a playoff game because you don't know how the rest of the teams are going to rattle. It ends up that we both think if Cape wins their last game, they're in, or they're in maybe no matter what, depending on, because of the situation. I'll let you talk more about that. But anyway, so it was just surprising to me. But congratulations to John Wilson and his team. They're in the playoff hunt.
Yeah.
And they might not have been if they had lost. So
exactly. I think that's the big point, that they may have been eliminated, especially if they were to lose to William Penn next week, which would be the season finale. But this one surprised me. It seems to be and I know that's only the third win for St. George's, but in the last couple of weeks, they just seem to be two teams headed in opposite directions. Mm-hmm. Cape looks like they kind of, that the strong part to the early part of the season, especially when they almost beat Sally's on opening night. And then they had some nice wins, and then they started to run into some of the better teams, and their youth is showing a little bit, I think. Right. And, Donovan Brooks, the quarterback for St. George's, I would love to say, I'm sure he had a good game. I'm sure he did, but there's not a single word written about this game anywhere that I could find. So it was not on TV. It was not anywhere. So, this is a big win for St. George's, and based on what happened, I think Cape got a gift yesterday when Caesar Rodney upset William Penn, because I think William Penn still was in the fight for it. Based on the numbers I put together last night, and again, this is unofficial, of course, but I can't see a way that it won't be Cape and St. George's at this point, even if William Penn were to defeat St. George's, and that's based on bonus points, things like that. It gets so nutty when you sit down and start to put this thing together. You can pull your hair out. But and I'm doing this while I'm watching the Phillies last night. So among also LSU, Alabama, Miami, Florida State, and
Notre Dame,
Clemson, Notre Dame. Yep. So there was a lot going on. But as far as I can tell, it looks like Cape and St. George's are going to be safe. But for William Penn, you don't want to take any chances. You want to go out and beat St. George's next week. But I agree, for John Wilson, congratulations. This team is starting to get it together. And if they get it together and make it into the playoffs, who knows? Donovan Brooks is such an explosive player at quarterback. Yep. He's one of those guys that could be a game changer, which we saw against Sally's last year.
And like we talked about, unless you're the 8th seed and you got Smyrna, and if you do, good luck. But other than that, it's going to be, it could be these games could be toss-ups. It's going to be fun. That's what's going to be fun about it.
Yep.
Let me mention Smyrna real quick. I know we're done with our quick hits, but I was at the Smyrna Appo game. Good Lord, Marty. They've got about 12 wide receivers that would start on most other teams. They got Markel Holman coming out of the backfield. The quarterback, Brian Wright.
Right. Yep.
He starts off the game with a pass up the middle of your night, boom, and it's 6-0. Before I even announced the start, I had no time to announce the starters for the defense for Appo High. It's just an incredible team. They have no weaknesses other than their personal foul penalties, which we've talked about, and they had 4 of them on Friday night. One of them are roughing the quarterback, which I don't really count that as a personal foul. I count the dead ball personal fouls as personal fouls. That's their one weakness that they've got to clean up. And, but even then they blow they blow Appo out, and, Appo's a good team. They hung in there. But they were out muscled in every category, like most teams have been against Smyrna, other than Middletown, way back in whatever week 2 or week 3 it was. And so, I've said for the last 3 or 4 or 5 weeks is that if I was a betting man and could bet $1,000, it would be on Smyrna. And nothing I saw in person changed my mind about that. They are clicking on all cylinders every phase of the game. They do not have a weakness. Other than on the field playing, once the ball snapped, they do not have a weakness.
And the thing is, if you manage to penetrate that defense, which is really, really good right now, and again, holding Appo to just 12 points when McConomy has been good for like 21 points on his own in most games.
Right.
It doesn't matter because
Mm.
they're so explosive
Yep.
offensively, and as you said, they can go any direction to any skill position player. Brian Wright is doing a phenomenal job of feeding these guys the ball with pinpoint passes. He's catching guys in stride, letting them do their thing, and boy, Ymir Knight gets his hands on the ball, and he is like greased lightning. I mean,
Yeah.
he's so much faster than everybody else on the field, and of course, you give it to Markel Holman, and all he does is beat your defense up for the rest of the game as he
Right.
bowls over everybody. Just one of the toughest runners I've seen out there. So yeah, this team, and we always talk about the Smyrna offense going back years, but as we've said repeatedly in the podcast, also is they've got a great
Yeah.
defense, and they do again. And this looks so much like the 2015 team that Nolan Henderson took to their first state title in terms of the explosiveness and the ability to stop anyone. I'm with you. If I was a betting man, they're definitely my favorite heading into the state tournament.
And one of the biggest differences I saw versus the games I saw them play earlier, which was not live. This was the first time I've seen them live. I don't know how many touches Ymir Knight had, but I guarantee you it is probably less than half of the touches he was having in weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, and
100%.
5.
There's some I've seen games where he's had like 10 touches total, but he scores 3 touchdowns or
Right.
4
Yeah.
touchdowns. I mean, it's
Yeah. He's, you know what he reminds me of? Is Chris Godwin.
yeah,
When he touches the ball, it used to be like when Chris Godwin touches the ball, you stopped whatever you were doing and you paid attention.
yes,
And, if you were talking to somebody sitting next to you and Chris Godwin touched the ball, you ignored that person while he was running back, and then you pick up your conversation.
yep.
And so he's not as big as Chris Godwin was, but he's just as quick and fast. And he's electric. That's the best term I can use,
Yep.
is when he touches the ball, no matter where he gets it. Sometimes they hand it off to him. Sometimes it's on a jet sweep. Sometimes it's a pass over the middle, which is what they scored on the first play of the game. He's just electric after he gets the ball. And it's hard to take him down by yourself. And it's hard to gang tackle him because he's so quick. So,
And credit to Coach Marks, who finds a way to get the ball to all these different guys at different times, because it's almost like the superstars on a basketball team when they say, well, there's only one ball and 5 guys go around.
Right.
Coach Marks and Brian Wright are making sure these
Yep.
are spread out among these guys, and they're all taking advantage of it.
And they're doing it when the game is still on the line. And that's
Yes.
important, because anybody can catch a pass. Well, not anybody, but when it's 54-0 and somebody throws a pass to you, it's a lot easier to catch and run than it is when the game's tied.
Yes.
And it's a big play for a first down.
Agreed.
So anyway, that's my bit on Smyrna for the day. All right, Marty, it's time for our biggest surprise. There were a couple surprises. I'm going to let you go first.
Mine was, and I just saw this in a tweet yesterday afternoon because I kept looking to find the score, but it was CR routing William Penn, not just beating William Penn, but 26-6. They snapped the 20-game losing streak. And, I had given a shout out last week to early college high school at Delaware State for hanging in there and persevering throughout the season, even though they haven't gotten a win. Hats off to CR, because this was an incredible performance. These kids continue to come out. And it's funny, Andy Walter, I said he'd been the jinx. He actually was the reverse this week. He wrote a feature article in Beta Bay News about Caesar Rodney, and Coach Candelora basically just said, look, these kids are coming out every day. They're working hard. They're trying. And when we get in a game, we keep shooting ourselves in the foot. They didn't do it this Saturday. Right. It kind of all came together for them. So to Coach Candy and his staff and all those kids, congratulations to lose 20 in a row and still have the fortitude to come out to practice, put in the work every week, and then come out and put together a resounding win against a team that was still in the playoff hunt. Hats off.
Yep. And, nobody's sure what Coach Candy is going to do next year, whether he's going to be offered to come back or decide on his own he's not coming back. There's not a whole lot of coaches more than Coach Candy I'd want my kid to play for. And so, this might be a game that the players rally together and say, hey, look, let's win this one for the coach. And so it'll be interesting to see, what happens with that. But hats off to Coach Candy. It says a lot when your team can come out and win in week 9 with nothing on the line against a team, as you mentioned, that maybe was a playoff game for them. Yep. And that's a great thing. We had a parent reach out from Caesar Rodney this morning, Marty, and ask, hey, could you do a mention for us? And I'm thinking, all right, well, let's, what's the mention going to be, and that type of thing. But it was a sincere, instant message. And I want to read it. And it was perfect timing with this. And this came from a parent of a CR player. And I'm going to read it verbatim. As you know, Caesar Rodney High School hasn't had a win in almost 2 years, and they finally won their first game. It's been such a tough year for the boys. Many of them have been injured. Some have quit. And those that stayed have played hybrid multi-positions. This team has amongst the highest sportsmanship, and there truly is some talent on this team, as they have juniors and sophomores as their starters. The boys on this team have never given up. And they always hold their heads high and have a positive mindset. It's a true brotherhood on and off the field. Could you please give them a shout out, as they really do deserve the recognition? Thank you so much, my friends. Enjoy your show, blah, blah, blah. She said, as a parent, it was an emotional moment for all. Sometimes the games are not all about the win. It's about the character that they build on and off the field. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, et cetera, et cetera. And that about sums it up. And you know where that starts? At the top.
Yep.
With a head coach. That's where that starts, at the top of
Yep.
the head coach. So, Coach Candy, congratulations, not only on your win, but what I'm going to call a great season off the field. Didn't have a great season on the field, but clearly you made a difference off the field. And 10 years from now, that's going to mean more than a 9-1 season would have meant, or 10-0 season would have meant.
Yep.
So congratulations. All right. My biggest surprise, DMA 13 conquered 12 in overtime. And Marty, I'm going to let you talk about that. Everything I read is that DMA had a lot of penalties and stuff like that.
Yep.
And that's why this game is close as it was. But what was even more shocking is something you tweeted out about the roster of Concord that night.
Yeah, Mike Lang originally tweeted this out, and it sounds like they have a roster of about 47 players. Well, 23 of them were out with the flu. This was, and I did confirm this with another parent. Not, Mike's always great with information, but I wanted to reach out to somebody else too, because I'm like, this can't be right. Yeah, half the team was out with the flu, and they still took DMA to overtime. It's funny. Last week we were singing DMA's praises about their offense finally getting things together.
For 1 week.
Yeah, minor step back this week.
Right.
Still able to pull out the win. Now I understand from Mike is what Concord went for 2 at the end of this game and was not able to get it in overtime. Unlike Brian Kelly.
Right. Yeah. Well, maybe Brian Kelly heard that he went
That's
for
right.
it, didn't get it.
He said, hey, if they're going to do it, I'm going for it too.
Right. Exactly.
No, so hats off to the Concord coaching staff and the kids for just a phenomenal performance. When I saw the 13-12, I thought Concord was going to get blown out in this game.
Right.
When I saw that half their roster was missing, I thought, wait, how didn't they get blown out in this game?
Yeah.
And it just sounds like the effort that the kids who were there put forth was incredible. Defensively, they held their own. I think this was it was 6-6 at the end of regulation. So a lot of defensive plays being made, and again, as you said, a lot of penalties being made throughout the game too. But this is just, congratulations to DMA for coming away with the win. But my biggest kudos in this game is to Concord, doing it with half a roster and taking a team that has been as good as DMA to overtime. It's just a phenomenal accomplishment.
And both those teams are in the playoffs, so there wasn't anything on the line going into it. But still, that overtime loss could be one of the best losses Concord has this season heading into the playoffs. So, all right, time for our top performances. I've got one I know you're not going to have, Marty, so I'm going to let you go ahead and go first.
My first one is the Caravel defense. Again, pitched their 4th shutout. They beat Milford. I know Milford hasn't had a great season, but Caravel's allowing only 5 points per game this season. And they just, the more and more I think about it, them and Friends appear to be on a collision course, which would be a phenomenal final, by the way. I don't know how the seedings are going to play out. I know the top 3 get the top 3 seeds, but the Caravel defense has just been on fire all season. They're always complimented by the offense, but it always starts with the D in Caravel.
All right, my top performances are the Noahs. First name Noah. NOAH''S, the Noahs.
I know one of them.
Yep. All right, so the first one is Appoquinimic's wide receiver Noah Hoff, 5 receptions for 2 touchdowns, the only 2 touchdowns Appoquinimic scored, 52-12. And what impressed me the most about Noah is I think it was his second touchdown, and it was 60 or 70 yards. I forget how long it was, but it was over 50 yards. Is they hit him on a bomb up the left sideline, and as soon as he caught the ball, within 2 steps, he changed his direction at an angle to head toward the middle of the field. And if he doesn't do that, he gets tackled. But he caught, most guys, when they go on a bomb and they catch the ball and they've got to step on the defensive player, the first thing they do is just keep running
just
straight.
A foot race.
And it's a foot race. And I'm pretty confident, with all due respect to Noah, he loses the foot race in this situation.
Right.
But instead, 2 steps in, he has the mentality to go on an angle, a 45-degree angle to the end zone, caught the defender completely off guard, and now he had a 4-step advantage instead of a 1-step advantage, and Noah's fast. and he got to the end zone for the score. And so that's what impressed me the most about Noah Hoff. And the quarterback, Nielsen, Greg Nielsen, I think is his name. And I should know that, but I've got a lot of names in my head right now. Greg Nielsen, he had a lot of passes, and this is a combination. Nielsen's only a freshman, and Noah Hoff's only a sophomore. And so the future is getting brighter for an air attack that we kind of made fun of early in the season because McConomy carrying the ball so often. McConomy, by the way, sat out the majority of the second half once this game was decided. Pretty sure it wasn't by an injury, or certainly not a major injury. Right. He didn't come off the field injured. But I thought that was a brilliant move by Brian Timpson, because this is a playoff team.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, they still got to go up and play Sally's Friday night. But anyway, so the connection is going to be fun to watch in the future. So Noah Hoff, the first of the Noahs of my top performers.
I guess we're going to Middletown. That's my guess.
Going to Middletown. We're going to Middletown. The other Noah Chrysler. Chrysler, sorry.
Yep, that's okay.
7 receptions, 192 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, there were a lot of touchdowns scored in that game, but still, to catch the ball 7 times, run for 192 yards. And again, talk about another connection between the two of them. Now, Noah is a senior, I believe. I looked up. I forgot to write it down. And, of course, their quarterback's a senior, too. So that's not a future connection that we're going to be about. But it was just funny. I now know 2 Noahs who play football in the state of Delaware, and both had big nights as wide receivers. So my top performance was the Noahs, and so that's my 2. The other one was Cesar Rodney, which we already talked about, so I won't mention.
And it's funny, I actually had Noah Chrysler, as one of our top players. I didn't mention him in the Middletown game because I was saving him. So I'm glad you brought him up. Now I don't have to worry about it.
All right,
I did have one more top unit I wanted to mention, and that was the Odessa defense. Held Seaford. Everyone picked, all the experts at Beta Bay News Journal. I would have done it if I was the same way, but everyone picked Seaford to win this game. Pretty big. Odessa wins 14-7. Seaford came in averaging 32 points a game. So this was a great performance by the Odessa defense. In their second season, again, they still don't have a senior class. They finished second in their district. So behind Laurel went 6-0. Odessa went 5-1 in the district. So this is an up and coming team, but their defense is really leading the way, and they could potentially throw a scare into one of the biggies in the tournament.
And they're a District 1 team now, destined for Class 1, destined for Class 3. Won't be in this next rollover, but it'll be probably after that. It's coming quick, just like Apple went through. All right, it's now time for our top performers segment, sponsored by Mary Kate Johnston of Remax Associates. If you're looking to buy or sell your house, Mary Kate's going to help you every step of the way. She's an award-winning realtor with more than 20 years experience in every development in Newcastle County. And so it doesn't matter where you live. She's bought or sold a house in that development for you. We've recommended her, my wife and I. She sold our house, and we purchased the house that we're in now and been in for 16 years, and she helped us every step of the way. Even once we refinanced about 7 years into it, and she helped us with that. And so it's not a one and done with her. She's your realtor for life once you have her. We've recommended her to dozens of friends, and they've loved having her as their realtor, and also recommended her to their friends. You might think you understand the real estate market. It's either booming or it's not, but she understands it in both directions. And so whether it's a first-time home, an upsize or downsize for yourself, an aging parent, or one of your children, do yourself a favor and reach out to Mary Kate Johnson and let her make sure you get the best value possible, whether you're buying, selling, or both. Her website is marykatej.remax.com. That's marykatej.remax.com. And if you end up using her as your realtor, tell her you heard about her on the podcast. She will give you for free a 1-year home and appliance warranty, which is something that you might hang on to, like we have in my household, for 16 years once we got it from Mary Kate when we sold, when she helped us through the process. So again, that's marykatej.remax.com. All right, Marty, top performers. I'm going to go first on this one. James Collins, and we've had him as a top performer for a couple of years. And here's why I picked him this week. I mean, he had 3 field goals, 9 of the 18 Sally's points in that win. But I look back through the scoring from the 9 seasons this week, and James Collins' points have made a difference in 3 of the 7 games that they've won. So what that means is basically without him kicking the extra points and the field goals in that game, Sally's potentially could have lost those games. And people might, if this is the NFL, people would say, well, anybody can come in and kick extra points or make a 25-yard field goal. We know from following high school football for the last 15
No.
years in this state, that doesn't happen.
No.
And so when you've got a kicker who you're guaranteed, I think he's missed one extra point, and I believe there was a problem on the snap or something. He's missed one extra point all season, and he's kicked a lot of field goals that have come from farther distance that most teams wouldn't even attempt a field goal. So James Collins has, I'm not going to say single-handedly won 3 of the 7 Sally's games, but he's given them points that most teams do not get from their kicker. So James Collins is my first top performer of the week.
Agreed. On every other team, those are 4th and to go situations where they have to go for it. They can't line up and kick a field goal like Sally's has the benefit of.
And that changes your third down call.
Absolutely.
When you know it's third and we kick a field goal, then you're taking a risk you wouldn't take otherwise in a lot of cases.
And this kid is automatic from a lot of distances, so it's not that big of a chance that Sally's is taking when they do that, which I love. I'm going to go. First of all, I had 3 guys. The first was Noah Crisilla, that monster game. The next 2 are both from Lake Forest, and as I said, I watched this game on Del Mar Sports Network. These guys were incredible. Aiden Young, they're both sophomores, by the way. So Lake Forest, the future is bright. Aiden Young, 17 carries for 111 yards and 3 touchdowns. Then there was Jameer Snell. I had to look this one up again. 2 carries for 114 yards and 2 touchdowns. You don't see that. You don't see that line very often. That's a Ymir Knight line from Smyrna. By the way, that wasn't the end. He also had 2 receptions for 58 yards and a touchdown, and he had an interception on defense. That's Jameer Snell. So 2 of the most promising sophomores in the state. And we still got 2 more years to see them, but Aiden Young and Jameer Snell are my 2 top performers.
All right, I had one more. It also came from Smyrna. Quarterback Brian Wright, 342 yards, 5 touchdowns, a quarterback that we've watched mature and grow into one of the top quarterbacks in the state, maybe the top quarterback in Class 3. And he just keeps getting better and better, and he's peaking at the right time. He looks like he's been quarterbacking for the last 3 years, and that's not the case.
His confidence level when he drops back is night and day from the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and that's just an added weapon to an offense that's already loaded with weapons, as we've talked about. All right, week 10, final week of the season. Again, a reminder, next week at this time, we're recording on Sunday morning like we always do. They're going to be figuring out the playoff indexes and all the games and stuff. So our podcast will drop a little bit later than usual next Sunday. I've been following this, Marty, for 15 years. I've gotten the playoff results as early as 11 o'clock, and I've gotten them as late as 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So you and I got to book our Sundays.
That's right.
Next week and be ready no matter what. So again, if you're used to us, we always advertise we'll drop the podcast by noon. That's not going to happen next Sunday. Our goal will be to drop it before dark. Maybe.
Yes, exactly.
And sometimes what happens, and we'll have no control over this, there's been a handful of times where the DA announces the field, and then it changes the next day because somebody points out something. And this happens with all sports. and this is not a bash on anybody involved
it's just
on the football committee or anybody. It's just the nature of it. And so anyway, I just want to remind people, don't think we're off next Sunday. It just isn't going to drop at noon. All right, week 10 games to watch. Again, every playoff spot is clinched except with possibly the Class 3 final 8th spot, which St. George's is still in it. Cape is still in it. William Penn is maybe teetering. They're not officially eliminated. If you look at numbers, at least we don't think so. But everything else has something on the line in terms of the rankings and where you go. And just a reminder, in Class 3, the top 2 seeds are guaranteed to get in, and they get the top 2 seeds. So the winner of District 1, winner of District 2 are your top 2 seeds. And then in Class 2 and Class 1, it's 12 teams in Class 2, 8 teams in Class 1, and it's by district. There's no wild card like there is in Class 3. And so it's but yet they cross over in districts. So that, in other words, they don't play within your district in the first round. It's all done by the indexing system like it always was. So anyway, hopefully I didn't make that more confusing. I probably did, but we'll figure it out and we'll have it all for you next Sunday. But anyway, lots of games. Marty, I think when I was looking at the games to watch, William Penn and St. George's would have been the gimme last week. Because it would have definitely been winner gets in. Because it would have been, if Cape had won, they'd be in most likely. And this would be William Penn, St. George's, much like Red Lion and Woodbridge was in week 9. Winner gets in, loser is out. Doesn't matter the score. But again, that's not the case anymore. Still a big game. Bigger game for St. George. Well, again, William Penn's got to win to have any shot. If they lose, they're definitely out.
Yep.
But if Cape wins and St. George's wins, who knows? And so enough about that. So if I have one I'm going to go to, I am probably going to go to DMA and Archmere.
That is incredible. Of all the games, we picked the exact same game. But go ahead.
And I've got 4 others listed.
Okay, good.
DMA and Archmere, it could be a potential state championship preview. Archmere's got a couple losses that, quite frankly, I didn't expect. I kind of thought Archmere might be 9-0 going into this game, especially the way they started. DMA, if somebody had said at the beginning of the season they're going to win a state title, I wouldn't have argued with them.
No.
And then they barely beat Concord in double overtime, and Concord's got half their roster there. So I think we're going to find out a little bit more about both these teams and where they're at now, which is what's most important. DMA starting out the season the way they did, that's not important anymore. They're in the playoffs, and the same with Archmere. And, DMA is going to have Nick Lincoln back for the first round of the playoffs. The suspension will be over. And so that game intrigues me. The DMA Archmere game, that's a Saturday game. I may even figure out a way to get there. I got about 4 other things I'd have to cancel to do that. So it's probably not going to happen, but that's going to be a very interesting game. If I had one game to go to, it would be DMA at Archmere.
Since you took that one, I'm going to go. My second one was, and this is more of a sort of graduate's pride kind of thing, but Caravel and St. Elizabeth's at Caravel, 2 undefeated teams, 2 teams that probably are not on the same talent level. I think it's probably safe to say. And roster size, Caravel would go into this the overwhelming favorite. But, I'm sorry, anytime you have a healthy Kasim Benson, which St. Elizabeth did not last year when they played Caravel in the season finale, which was St. Elizabeth's ended up being St. Elizabeth's first loss of the season. St. Elizabeth looks to be at full strength right now. Caravel, we know, is at full strength. I'm just curious to see going into the playoffs how this plays out. Both of these teams are going to be among the favorites to take the title in each of their classes, but I'm curious to see a matchup of the two and how it plays out. Kasim Benson is the big weapon for St. Elizabeth's, but Caravel's defense has been stifling this season. So I imagine there's not one guy shadowing Benson. There's going to be 2 or 3 guys shadowing Benson, and they're going to say to St. Elizabeth's, if you can beat us another way, go ahead and do it. But but who knows if they're capable of it. So this is an intriguing game to me.
That was on my list too, and so was Apo at Sally's. Marty, here's the district records in Class 3A. Salesianum 4-0. So basically, if they win the district, and they guaranteed the first or the second seed. Appoquinimac's 3-1. So if they beat Sally's, they become 4-1. Sally's becomes 4-1. Head to head, Appoquinimach gets the higher seed, I believe.
Well, remember,
the
Middletown.
Index. It'll be the index. And Middletown.
We're going to have a 3-way. If Apo is able to win that game, we're going to have a 3-way tie. There is a not so, and I worked this out. It's funny. I worked this out last night. There's a not so crazy scenario where Middletown wins the district.
Right.
So it's still a possibility. All 3 of these teams are still in the mix.
Well, Middletown's 3-1. So if they beat Hodson, they'll be 4-1. So they'll win. Right. So
no, because you'll still
because Apple will be 4-1 and Sally's will be 4-1. You're right.
Now,
exactly
if Sally's wins, it's over because Sally's has the head-to-head over Middletown. So
you're right. Yep. So anyway, that's going to be an interesting game.
There's a lot at play in that game. Yes,
there is, and not even just who's going to win that class, but then where do you fall in that top 4 or 5?
Yep.
That's good. And are you hosting or are you going somewhere else? So that's going to be interesting for sure. All right, time for our shout outs. But again, remember, support our sponsors, AndreLphotography.com. That's AndreLphotography.com. If you're looking for portraits, still pictures, action shots, whatever you want. Great photographer, certainly a pro. And then if you're looking for a real estate agent for any reason, MaryKateJ.Remax.com. Mary Kate Johnston, that's MaryKateJ.Remax.com. Buying, selling, whatever the situation. She's a great realtor. Remember, mention that you heard about it on the podcast. And if you end up using her, you get a free home warranty for 1 year. All right, Marty, your first shout out.
Mine, I just have one this week. And again, I kind of go along the same lines of guys just working through adversity, and that's Del Castle. Coach Kerry Galloway, that he's so positive on Twitter about everything, and his team has fought. They've had 5 games that were decided by less than double digits this season. Now, they had some games that were blowouts, but these kids have had such a hard luck season, and they had it again against Conrad
Yeah.
on Thursday night. So, to Kerry Galloway and his staff, I think he's improved things so much. Last year, they actually saw that in the wins and losses. This year, they don't have it in the wins and losses, but they still have it in the product that's being put
Right.
on the field. So, to Kerry Galloway and his staff, I just want to give a shout out to, and the kids for hanging in there. Marvin Atkins is an amazing athlete at quarterback. He was the first team all district quarterback last year. So, just a great job of keeping the kids up and in most of these games this season.
Yeah, similar to what Cesar Rodney's done up at
Yep,
Class 3.
exactly.
Same situation. Again,
Yep.
that all starts at the top. Both head coaches, so congratulations. All right, my shout out goes to the governor, Governor John Carney, and not because he's instituted my ask that there needs to be a full-time paid athletic trainer at every school,
That's
regardless
right.
of the size of the school or the situation. He's still working on that, I assume.
Yep.
But he showed up at Hodson for
He did,
Coach Frank
yeah.
Moffitt's final home game at Hodson. Apparently, they're friends. And, so the shout outs to Governor Carney for taking time out of his busy schedule to do that. Not sure if he might have hopped right from there over to UD, where he's often seen at the University of Delaware games. But anyway, congratulations to Frank Moffitt that's kind of the second part. The real reason for the shout out is Frank Moffitt's 20-year career will come to an end against Middletown this week. The last game was at Hodson. They had a wonderful celebration with former players coming back. All Frank did was win 153 games. He won 4 state titles, 3 of them at the Division II level, and then 1 of them at Division I once Hodgson moved up into that category. So a lot of debate whether, it's also the last football game that'll be played at Hodson Stadium, as it's going to be demolished, and they're going to build a new one between where the current school is.
Yeah, they'll be on the road for 2 years.
And Route 1, they'll be on the road for 2 years. Probably not far away. There's plenty of turf comp.
Yep.
They'll probably end up playing some at Caravel and maybe a couple at St. George's, not sure. But anyway, so really a celebration in a lot of different ways at Hodson. And so Frank Moffitt, congratulations, 153 wins and the 4 state titles. There's a petition going around to name the new stadium after him. But people have to remember there's also a guy named Larry Silk who coached there for years.
That's right.
And was very successful. And so, but sometimes it's, what have you done for me lately? And obviously Coach Frank Moffitt has been the most successful coach lately. So
yes,
not sure what will be done with that new complex. The current stadium is not named after anyone, nor is the field. So it's not like they've automatically got something done with that. So it'll be interesting to see.
And I wanted to piggyback on that too. I watched this game start to finish, and and I put on Twitter, I think this was the ugliest, grittiest, but hard fought and most entertaining game of the season. Yeah. It was crazy. It had a little bit of everything. And, Frank, with 2 minutes and 30 seconds to go, he goes for the 2-point conversion and the win, which I loved. Yeah. I just think, he's done this for so long, and they had a shot and he saw it and they went for it. This was also, Hodgson's had such a rough season. Yeah. They're down 15 points with about 4 minutes to go, and it's over. Yep. And boy, they did not give up. The defense comes up with a big play. They force a 3-and-out very quickly from Newark. This was just the grittiness of this game, and you could tell the atmosphere was great. During every timeout, they announced players from their championship teams. They had cheerleaders going back to their championship years. And they had a video message from Bilal Nichols that he sent in that was played on the board from the Las Vegas Raiders. So it was really neat. Yeah, they highlighted the NFL players he's coached, and it was just a big celebration the whole game. And I was aching for him to get that win. Yeah, it just wasn't in the cards. But to go out the way they did. Now, granted, they're going to have Middletown this week. Right. So this was probably their best chance for a win. But the way they played and the grittiness and the toughness they showed in trying to get this win, I thought was just a great testament to Frank Moffitt.
Yeah, so congratulations to Coach Moffitt, and I'll have a short blurb about him in my Sports Buzz column in the Newark Post this week if people want to check it out. But not sure who the next coach is going to be. I know Dave Collins is interested in it. He certainly has the athletic director's vote since he is the athletic director. But
I was going to say, yeah.
From what I know about Coach Collins, the school would be foolish not to put that program in his hands. He's been the offensive coordinator for several years and played at Hodson, so they'd be foolish if he really does want the job, which I know he does, to not hire him. So, but the end of an era at Hodson.
It is.
And, there's not a lot of 20-year coaches at one place anymore, Marty. And so, they either bounce around or don't last or whatever. So congratulations to Frank Moffitt, a CR grad. And so a Delaware guy, always fun to see Delaware guys succeed. So, all right, that's going to do it for this week. And week 9 in the books, week 10 coming up. Remember, we'll be a little bit late next Sunday as we wait for the announcement, the pairings to be announced for each of the classes. And we'll have an overview about all of that and talk about our thoughts on how things are going to work out. So again, we appreciate everybody tuning in. Follow us on Twitter at DELHS Football. And you can search for us on Facebook. We're there too. Reach out to us, as several people have, with comments and thoughts and in your opinion, to get involved on Twitter when we have conversations there. We appreciate it. So for Marty Sheehan, I'm John Buzby. Week 10, the final week of the regular season is here. Have a great sports week.